Dr. Mike Prince. We are joined with Coach Heist Northern to talk a little football talk. Coach, how you doing today, my man?
Man, I'm doing pretty good. Doing a couple things for the family, getting ready for spring break as a lot of people getting ready for spring football. So I'm looking forward to the break more or less for my kids, and looking forward to catching a few spring football practices around the conference and some high school spring football when they start a little bit later. But like I say, most of the Division I FBS or FCS programs in the state of Texas and Louisiana are starting or have started, all within the next 2 weeks they'll be starting spring football.
Okay, now I'm assuming that you'll try to make the Southern spring practice for sure. What about Grambling, Prairie View, Jackson, any others?
Well, I may get to Grambling. I'm sure I will get to Texas Southern, Southern Prairie View, maybe Alcorn. I'm not 100% sure. I've talked to a friend of mine that works up there about if I need to stay somewhere overnight if I go watch a practice. But it's going to be some interesting things if you think about it. Every school on the western side of the SWAC has a new offensive coordinator, so it's going to be some real interesting quarterback battles, to say the least, because, you know, some teams are returning a guy that may have started for them last year, but now they have different coaches in place, whether it be head coach or offensive coordinator. So that's the main thing that people want to see. What do we have under or behind center? And then you have to, you know, think about, a lot of people are worried about, can they get their scheme implemented? Can we get through it without getting any major injuries? And then the other thing that a lot of people have to think about is who is still going to be here after spring football is over with.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, with the way everything is being sneak attacked with this transfer portal, NIL deals, is hurting us more than one way. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But with the spring football, and I know it's always been around, Coach, but it seems like it's even greater emphasis today on spring football. When do you recall this thing really taking off to become its own marketable project?
Well, I think I would say when ESPN started televising spring games, I think it took off a little bit more, and then people started making almost like a festive atmosphere around spring football. So just say at a school like Prairie View, they may have their spring football game along with the PV relays and a baseball game. Southern may have a similar setup where they'll have multiple events going on the same weekend. Or some schools have what's called Spring Fest, so they may try to tie their Spring Fest in with the spring game. So they may have a concert that Saturday night, spring game in the morning, concert Saturday night, or spring concert Friday night, spring game Saturday. You know, so it's becoming more of a mini homecoming for the students that are on campus than the alumni. But it's just a way to get more excitement, try to get some season ticket sales started, and try to figure out what do you have coming up for the season in store.
Right. Now, in the old days, there used to be a free charge service, and on the smaller scales, they are free. But now these people are charging admission, I guess, any way to make a little fundraising profit, right?
Yeah, and a lot of times what I would hear people saying, because of the amount of people that were coming, it was, you know, it might not be the 20, it may be the $5 or $10, and that money will go directly into the football program for X, Y, Z. They may have something that they have earmarked. So that's just another way of getting money directly into your football program. You know, they say $5 a ticket. Most people will spend that just to watch a little bit of football. So it you know, it's just always a way to try to get more money in the bank accounts of the universities and the program.
Yes, sir. Now, last week, Grambling released the official announcement of Coach Joseph naming his coaching staff. We can run through that real quick, and then you got a new old guy in your old stomping grounds at Jag Nation, man.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so, you know, a lot of people have spoken about Coach McNair joining the coaching staff at Southern University. Now, what the official title was, it was still up in the air. I know on paper there was a opening for a quote-unquote tight ends coach, but whether or not he's going to coach the tight ends or be the special teams coordinator, I think that was still sort of left up for debate, because if you think about it, Coach Totten is still on the staff. Coach Fredericks probably is going to take the running backs position, and then Coach McNair, who has an offensive background, may take the tight ends or receivers, and you can move some people around. You know, if you can coach wide receivers, you can coach tight ends. That's what the thought process is amongst a lot of people. Some people have a slot receivers coach and an outside receivers coach. So if you can work, and a lot of people may combine the tight ends coach with the slot receivers because you can use them. And then, and nowadays too, the tight end is a quote unquote H or fullback. The tight end may meet with the running backs coaches on Mondays and Wednesdays, and with the receivers coaches on Tuesdays and Thursdays, because of the motions and the inside zone, the cutoffs. So it's some different things that they may be doing to make sure that they get the most out of not only Coach Totten, but Coach McNair experience as well. And then Grambling, they came, you know, everybody's new, but, you know, now it's the make an announcement, make it official with Coach Joseph's staff, with Coach Dooley going back to Grambling as the offensive coordinator, and then his defensive staff with, oh, man, I can see Coach. He was the interim, Coach Rollins. Coach Rollins was the interim coach at Southern, had a long track record at McNeese and Tulane for a while. He's the defensive coordinator at Grambling. So they made those announcements official, I want to say Monday or Tuesday of this week.
Yes, sir. So with everything that is shaping, has it been a good return for Coach Dooley back to Grambling, or is all forgotten, you know, and it is what it is when you split the first time around?
Well, I think what some people are thinking, he did a good job when he was there before. Prairie View's offense was pretty decent. I would say above average when he was there, got him to the championship while he was calling plays. And then Southern fell off, you know, like I say, for whatever reason, you know, was it, you know, I think it was a combination of things. It was a personnel issue, primarily at the quarterback position. And then because of the quarterback, they became very predictable. And that makes it, you know, yeah, you can say people going to know what you're going to do, but sometimes if you don't have above average talent, you have to do something to make the defense slow down. And because the quarterback was not a running threat, that made the whole offense suffer. You can do a lot of things if you have a mobile quarterback. But I think for the most part, I would say 55% are happy that he is back because of what he did when he was the offensive coordinator before. And some people, you know, they got a bad taste in their mouth because the last thing that he put on paper was being a play caller at Southern University. And that was not a very productive offense, to say the least. So, you know, you got some that's happy and some that's not.
I got you. Now, the more intriguing one for not only just me, I imagine, but people who keep up with Southwestern Athletic Conference football, as you mentioned, with Fred McNair coming to Southern. You got to give kudos to you know, I'm like you now, Coach is slipping my name, Graves, Coach Graves, of bringing in a guy of that caliber some guys would be intimidated. You don't want to bring anyone that well known and respected for looking over their own shoulder.
Nah, I mean, some guys feel like that because they're not secure in themselves. I think Coach Graves, number one, he's a first-time head coach, a first-year head coach, and he has 2 guys on his staff that have been head coaches in the conference, so they can look at things from a perspective of, okay, when I had this problem, whether it was getting money for summer school, whether it was a travel issue, whether it was dealing with someone on campus, be the equipment manager, the trainer, the cafeteria, he can bounce like, hey, man, how did you handle this? Or what you think about this? Am I wrong? So I think that's a good move on his part to have someone that he can bounce things off of, in my opinion. But
right.
I myself have been on the other side of guys not necessarily wanting to hire you because either they want to feel like they're the smartest guy in the room, or they know they can't talk to you a certain way, they are scared that if things go wrong, people are going to say, well, that guy should be in charge. He shouldn't be that guy's assistant. So I've been on both sides of it. I'm always have the best people around me no matter what situation, because technically those smarter guys or better coaches can make your job easier. And I have an understanding as a coach, my job, no matter what position I have, is to make the head coach or the coordinator look like they are the best head coach or best coordinator that there is. And, if I get some glory, fine. If I don't get some glory, I know my kids the players that play the position that I coach are going to appreciate what I did for them. And I think that's Coach Graves' idea is, man, I'm gonna find the best people for the budget that I have, and we're gonna make this thing go.
Talking with Coach Heiss Northern, our football guru expert, about some coaching changes that's going on throughout the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and particularly focusing on the West right now. Now, Coach Purview has made some change, Alcorn's made some change, and, of course, Texas Southern. What are you getting as far as the new look coaching staffs from these programs?
Well, I'm wanting to say everybody is going to be happy until they lose to their rival. Everybody's, we got such and such now. So hopefully the word that we all hate to say, hopefully the coach or the mindset will change and we will do some things that's going to make us winners. Now, sometimes you're going to win because sometimes it's just those players be like, hey, man, I'm tired of what we have worked too hard not to win. And I would say, like in Texas Southern case, they've been right there with a lot of people, and they've beaten some of the better teams in the conference. If not, they played a good game and lost late to them. So some of those guys may finally say, look, man, we can't, if we do the small things right, we can win some football games. So it's really not on the coaches. Sometimes it's the players have to have a mindset of we're not going to beat ourselves. But I think all of the people are happy. I know Pine Bluff recently announced that they hired Coach Hull, who was the offense coordinator at Grambling. He was a former high school coach in the New Orleans area, worked at Kansas, worked at ULM. They recently brought him in. So everybody's working with someone new. And I think, like I say, everybody is pretty happy for the most part with their hires and their support staff. Now, I tell you what, Texas Southern, I don't know what I'm not going to say I don't know what they're doing, but they are trying to do the best job of keeping it A1 top secret, confidential of what they are doing down there.
Okay. But
stuff still gonna leak. Yeah, right. Stuff still gonna leak because, sometimes people, they want to let people know that they know stuff, and then they may tell some stuff that the head coach or coordinator might not want to get out, but in the wanting to feel important, they put things out there that they shouldn't per se. But I think that's sort of to each his own. But at the end of the day, it's gonna all get out. Guys gonna put clips from practice on their Instagram account, or guys are going to put clips, they highlight tape on one of their social medias, the YouTube, or if they make a one-handed catch in practice, the next thing you know, it's showing up somewhere else that it shouldn't be. But I know they keeping things under wraps like it's top secret over there.
Well, that makes me laugh always when it comes to the depth chart, especially the first game of the season or your first conference game. Everybody guarding these things like they're top secret documents. And to me, it's really easy. You can put together anything for a depth chart. It doesn't mean it's absolutely true. And you can say at the last minute, sometimes change. Why do people guard depth charts so much?
Man, I think a little bit because if you know a certain guy is in a certain spot, you can game plan, especially when you have a new staff. Like, okay, I remember this kid. Let me go back and look and see, especially on the offensive line, what moves he may be success, like an up and under or club rip, all that type of stuff. Or if you have a defensive back that you see, like, you may say, like, man, they got this kid starting. I remember this kid. So I think that's one of the reasons why. And then also, too, I remember I was at one school, and they basically had the grad assistant like, hey, put who you want, where you want, and turn this into the sports information director. It was like no coaches on the staff had any say-so on who were the starters. They was like, hey, get this to the sports information director. Y'all two GAs take care of this. And that's what we went into the first game with. So it's that type of stuff. And then I've also seen schools send a depth chart to another school I was working at, sort of to prove that some guys that they had gotten were eligible. And how they did it, we have no idea, because at the time, I'll tell you like this, I was at Grambling, and Grambling had pretty liberal admissions and academic eligibility standards at the time. And we couldn't get these guys eligible. But all of a sudden, another school that we playing in the SWAC sends us their depth chart along with their eligibility roster to say, hey, these guys are eligible, so we don't want to hear anything, because it basically came down to us and them for the players. But, it's one of those types of things where you think you're getting over, but at the end of the day, it don't matter at the end of the day.
Right, because my antidote to that would be, okay, it's not the depth chart that we thought it was, and that's why you have halftime adjustments. And go on with the game. You still got to execute your play and do what needs to be done. So if the guy that you was going up and preparing for was on the left side of your line, well, you see he's to the right, well, you flip it to the right and adjust accordingly. But, that's always intrigued me about that. Now, another thing that's intriguing me, Coach, is this NIL stuff. We've talked about it time after time. It's really no NIL level on our level. I guess the extra NIL level on our deal, we can give you an extra patty or something if you come and be a part of it. But this thing has become so serious that it is really spilling over to our world, if you allow me to put it like that, in a critical way now.
Yes. So in the last couple of weeks, I have talked to, I put like this, I have talked to quite a few coaches on the FCS level, and I have talked to a couple of coaches on the FBS level, the Power 5, schools per se. So the FCS level guys that I talked to said they are almost becoming junior colleges for some of the big boys. So one of the things that came up is a while ago, you and I talked about Texas Southern losing their starting cornerback to the University of Houston.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So talk to a coach at Southern. One of their starting cornerbacks may now be the opposite starting cornerback at the University of Houston. So the University of Houston, Big 12 school, can possibly start the season with two former all-SWAC guys as their starting cornerbacks.
Wow.
So that's sort of where this thing is going. I've also talked to coaches that said they've lost a kid to the portal. So one of the coaches said, all right, they can understand, but they hate it. So one of the coaches was telling me, like, Heist, you're not going to believe this. He said, we talked to a guy that we lost. He said, basically the kid got $5,000 to take a visit. Just to take a visit. Wow. He got a signing bonus. So once the kid basically announced where he was going to go to school, he got another more than $5,000. A good bit more. I'm not going to say the exact number, but he got a good bit more than the $5,000. Then they told the kid he would get an NIL deal, and all he would have to do is do some interviews and post 3 times a week on his social media accounts for XYZ. So it may be, just say if you in Prairie View, may be the county line in Buckers and then one other place. But he has to post 3 times about XYZ on his social media accounts. Oh, by the way, he gets his cost of attendance and he gets his Pell Grant. So the coach was like, I can understand a kid taking all, he's like, you know, the kid is going to be making more money than almost every coach on our staff, you know. So wow. That's the thing that is going on with some of the schools in the SWAC. And if you think about it, the last, I want to say 2 out of the last 3 years, Prairie View has lost the safety to Kansas State. And those guys went up there and played. But just imagine if those same guys had stayed at Prairie View, how much of a difference, if you can go to Kansas State and make a difference and start and play, how much of a difference can those guys have made on our level? So yes, that's sort of what our coaches are dealing with. But, you know, we can complain about it, but, you know, it's almost, how can you tell a kid not to take $5,000 to $10,000 a month? That's a tough one. But at the same time, you want loyalty, especially if you were the only one that took a kid. And, you know, the coach's sentiment was basically, if these guys are so good at evaluating and coaching and developing talent, how are they getting these 3- and 4-star kids out of high school and not developing them to the point where they can play on a Big 12 SEC level? And I'm taking a 0-star guy, coaching him up, and now he has a chance to go to Big 12, SEC, ACC, if you understand what I'm saying. So that's the sentiment of some of the coaches in the conference that are taking 0-star guys, and now they are starting somewhere else for someone else, you know. But, you know, it's like, what can you tell a kid when he has a chance to make a lot of money?
As a coach and recruiter, how do you counter that?
Man, you know what? It would drive me totally crazy because like I say, I speak for myself. I never looked for a job until I didn't have a job. You know, even if I had a job and somebody called me, I would say, hey, have you talked to X, Y, Z? So I am I am where I am until I need to be somewhere else type of guy. So that would throw me for a loop. I would not handle that well, to be honest with you, especially if I was the only one that took a chance on you. So that would disturb me. but at the same time, it's like, I somewhat understand, but I would hate to understand. So but I would not sell the fact. It's almost to the point where, like I say, the coach at Alabama A&M said it, that people want to rip him to shreds. But it's almost like,
I was thinking about that. Yes, sir.
More and more coaches at the FCS level are looking at themselves like a junior college. Like, hey, if you look at our roster, we have had 5 guys go to Power 5 football last year. So that means we are doing something right at Southern Texas, Southern Prairie View, Grambling. We're doing something right that the big boys on our guys. So that's almost what you're dealing with. And I went to a recruiting seminar. So the way that recruiting is going now is, if you at a Power 5 school, it is transfer portal, junior college, prep school, high school, freaks of nature. It's no high school development, guys. Just, can this guy be ready to, if not be a good starter for us as an 18-year-old, can he be a solid backup his first year of school, fighting for a starting job his second year of school? If not, we gonna move on from it. He's gonna be in but the SWAC schools, the FCS, the Lamars, Houston Christians now, they are getting more 2- and 3-star kids that might have been a couple of years ago going to a TCU, University of Houston, SMU. Those high school guys are now trickling down. But the problem is, if they come to your school and ball their first and second year, now they going back to where they probably would have gone out of high school. That's what coaches are telling me. And the guy at the recruiting seminar that I went to basically was saying the same thing.
Well, how does this, or do you see it in any way on a long term, affect football on the lower levels?
Well, the only thing that eventually the problem is that they're going to run into is, how do we keep paying these kids some of all this money? And then what I think is really going to be is, what happens when the university starts complaining about not getting the donations for facilities that are now going to NIL deals. I think that's going to be as they say, the come to Jesus meeting, when the university start complaining about, we gave a quarterback $2 million, and that $2 million normally would have gone to an excess fund for this building on campus, or for this XYZ somewhere else, or towards scholarships for your non-revenue sports, or your Olympic sports, as they like to say.
Yes, sir.
That's what's going to be the come to Jesus moment, though.
Well, do you think with the way money is being, pumped into football, and, they're already complaining about it, but it seems like they're going to have to do even more, how soon will we get to possibly eliminating sports? To be NCAA qualified, you got to have 14 sports minimum. Can you see that number actually going down? I know the Title IX will be a factor, but a way that they can try to remedy this thing by cutting back on some of the other sports.
Yeah, the other thing is either going to be, let's do our own thing. Football is now going to be non-NCAA. And they'll have their own more or less set of rules, and everything else will fall under having to be Title IX compliant. So it may go that route, or it's going to be almost like we're affiliated with the university, but not necessarily a part of it. And then with some schools voting to unionize, the thing that may happen is they may try to input a salary cap on how much either certain guys or certain sports can pay out in NIL money and all that cost of living and stuff like that. That's what may happen.
Well, if you go that route, if you can do that, what they say is good for the gander is going to be good for the goose. You need to have a ceiling cap on what you can pay these coaches as well.
Well, that's going to be the other thing. But if you notice, in all the sports that have a salary cap, coaches don't have a salary cap. So, and then you have to look at the labor force. The labor force is, just say, 60 to 70% look like me and you. But
right.
the managerial force does not look like you and I. So
right.
it may be a salary cap for the labor, but not the managers. You know, it's just like the Fortune 500 companies. They're not gonna put a salary cap on those people, but when you deal with sports, that may end up coming down the line. So just like I say, don't be surprised if in a couple of years you hear, okay, now it has gotten out of control. Now we got to get the toothpaste back in the tube.
Right. Well, I'm looking on an FCS level in particular. They need to get ahead of the curve because they were already ahead of the curve with the structure of the football playoff system. And it seemed like the Power 4 and now soon to be Power 2 with the talks of what SEC and Big Ten are talking about as far as maybe it's time for us to start our own thing and let those who can't afford to be where we are recreate and go back to the drawing board and start something new where they have a chance to win a championship. And in the case of FCS, we know it all boils down to money, and it's okay if you're not the richest person in the world, but you got enough to still put together functioning, quality programs along with other programs that are in your caliber. I don't see what's wrong with that, but people give me kickback when I say that.
Yeah, I mean you have to do what's best for your level, your institution. I think that's what it's going to come down to at the end of the day. And can you still put a viable product on the field if you deal with these wholesale changes? Like, you remember at one time, nobody left FCS and transferred up. It was always the guys, because the FBS schools were holding on to guys that were not very good, but they held on to them for depth purposes. Now and you don't have to deal with APR pretty much. Now it's guys are going everywhere if you think you can play. You betting on yourself, and schools are taking chances, especially on the all-conference guys from the SWAC. And I don't know if I told you about another thing that was being said was, just say some of the bigger schools that have more coaches on their football, I'd say more staff, not coaches, more staff on their football staff than some schools have in their entire athletic department. Certain schools have guys that all they do is track SWAC football players. All they do is track Southland Conference football players. All they do is look at different schools that they may not play against, or they'll look at film on guys that are making all conference somewhere else that may be a freshman or sophomore, and let's see, do we think that this guy can play at our level? And that's all they're doing is just looking at transfer portal, finding out guys that are making all conference, finding out guys that are leading the NCAA in certain statistics, and let's get a height and weight on this guy, and let's see, do we think if we got enough money, can we entice this kid to get in the portal and come to our place?
Well, the opening of Pandora's box has been television rights and deals, right? Because the collegiate athletics was designed to be nonprofit. In fact, it's a 501c entity. And that's why they're spending all this money, because they can, so they can justify keep getting all this money. That's why you have these specified coaches and especially you got a guy that measures the water, make sure if it says 6 ounces, it can't be 6.5, it got to be exactly 6 ounces. and all this kind of specialized services that they're providing. And meanwhile, those who don't have, you got one guy doing 10 positions. I go back to SIDs. On our level, and if anybody should be taken care of, should be an SID, because the SID is what really officially tells your story. But when you got one or two people trying to handle 14, 18 sports, and when you go up, you got one person that only does football, the other one only does basketball, the other one does baseball or softball. And I laugh at the fact that with the basketball, on the Power 4 basketball, you notice that the women and the men, they play on different nights. One might be in California, the other will be in Omaha. Okay, well, with the SWAC proposing to go to a 1-2-1 basketball schedule for the next season, playing women on Thursday, a traditional doubleheader on Saturday, and then the men play on Monday. Now, understand the purpose behind it, because that Monday night game, the men games are ending real late. It's a long travel time. But when you split that thing up like that, and people are not thinking about it, number one, just from a broadcaster's perspective, right? You got a broadcaster who's going to have to leave on Wednesday to cover the women on Thursday. He'll rest on Friday, then do the doubleheader on Saturday, rest on Sunday to do the finishing game on Monday. That person's gone 5 days, and these guys are not going to be compensated that kind of pay from these institutions. These are side jobs for most of these guys. They're going to have to increase the value just to cover that, especially if you're talking about Title IX stuff.
Well, the other thing you have to think about is how much more time those, I'm always going to favor the students. Even as a coach, I would always have the students back. But how much class, if you go to that model, normally you may miss class on Friday and Monday. But if you go to that model, then you're going to miss class because you're going to probably leave on Wednesday for Thursday, Friday. The other thing you got to think about, how many more nights of hotels you're going to pay for if you busting it, all those types of things. How do I get my bus drivers rested enough to get us back safely? So it's a whole lot that's I don't see that model working, because I just don't think that, nothing against women's sports, but if you have just a women's game on certain nights, is that going to be productive? Or if you just say if Southern is coming to play on Friday and Saturday in the Houston area, what's the likelihood of them going back to catch the other game the next day, if you understand what I'm saying? So you're going to end up losing people. Then you may end up losing some of your own fans on a Thursday night. Who's going to want to come out to watch a game and then have to come back on Saturday? So you may end up losing, your Thursdays may be looking like an intramural game, and your Saturdays may look better. So that's something that you're going to really have to, that they have to think about, not you, but I can't see that working. But, I'll just say let's move on, because I can't see that happening.
Well, Coach, look, man, it's always the time is flying. But next week, man, we got to break down the East moves from the coaching staff. Is that all right?
Yes.
Okay, look, you got any closing thoughts and comments this week, my man?
Yeah. Hey, a couple of weeks ago, I told you to remind me about the time I thought my mother had. We were talking about women's basketball. So the year after I graduated from Southern, I was coaching girls basketball at the high school that I graduated from. And my sister was on the team. So I want to say I may have been the head JV coach on paper. So my sister got hit in the nose by a girl, and my sister wanted to fight the girl. She got mad. Sometimes when people get mad, they get tears in their eyes. So I told my sister, like, hey, you can't cry on the bench. So, she kept crying. She's like, look, I'm not crying. I'm mad. I want to beat this girl up. So I said, look, go to the locker room, and when you stop crying, come back. Well, in order for her to get to the locker room, we were playing at McKinley High School. in order for her to get to the locker room, she had to walk past both benches. So eventually she came back out after she calmed down. So, you know, after the game, like I say, I'm still living with my parents at the time. So I get to the house after the game, and I walk in the door, and my mother, she took her thumb and she poked me in the chest real hard with her thumb. So Mike, God honest truth, I thought my mother had hit me with a butter knife. I thought she stabbed me with a butter knife in my chest. So her exact words to me, and Mike, I'm standing in my dad's house right now, like almost right where I thought I was stabbed. Look, she said, "Look here, mister." She didn't call me by my name. She said, "Look here, mister. Don't you ever send my daughter to the bench or to the locker room and embarrass her like that." So since he didn't call me mister, I didn't call her mama. I say, "Look here, ma'am. Tell your daughter don't." I say, "Tell your daughter don't cry on my bench, and we won't have this problem again." And so Mike, it's the God on the truth, man. I thought she stabbed me, but it was you know, we sort of laughed about it for a while, but you know, her whole thing was, you know, look, my thing was, I know my sister, if she would have stayed out there, she probably would have rushed the court and jumped on that girl. But you know, my whole thing was, you know, like say, I'm in a football mindset, like, hey, it's almost like it's no crying out here. You know, I don't know what y'all expect, but nah, this is not the way we gonna roll. But man, my mom say, "Look here, mister," and poke me in my chest. But like I say, it is still funny to me to this day as I sit in the kitchen, the doorway at my parents' house.
Look here, they always say, "Mama's babies, Papa's maybe." Don't matter how old they get, Mama will come to the rescue, man. That is all right.
Hey, them mama bears something, I tell you.
Well, Coach, man, we definitely appreciate it as always. We'll go over our notes from the East on next week. He is our football expert / guru, Coach Heiss Northern. There you go, laughing again. I tell you, ought to be used to that by now, Coach. I am the radio guy, Dr. Mike Prince. You can follow me on X at The Mike Prince Show. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at the Open Mic Broadcast Network. Visit our website, obnradio.com, for our 24-hour streaming content. And until the next time, you guys be blessed, and we'll see you on the other side.